Well, greetings, friends. Welcome once again to Just Steve. As you guys know, just really nothing fancy, just me finding interesting people and chatting with them and kind of seeing where it goes. I love doing this deal, and today I found somebody else who I think is going to be really interesting. Her name is Bonnie Flemington, and she is a nutritionist. And Bonnie, welcome to Just Steve.
Thank you, Steve. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, where are you located?
Well, I live in Ontario, in Canada, just west of Toronto. And I grew up in Toronto, and I have not moved too far away.
Okay, and you haven't said A yet, so you haven't said process or any of these sorts of things yet.
Sorry, pardon me?
Maybe the audio is getting a little bit catchy. I'm going to mute my video here. No, so I haven't heard you say process or Lake Trout or A.
Well, you might hear it. You might hear it on our podcast.
It might come out. All right. Well, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do in our world, and kind of how you occupy your time.
Well, as you mentioned earlier, I am a certified nutritionist. I wasn't always a nutritionist. I started my career in accounting, actually. And I led myself to nutrition really through my own health issues. I was a young mother with 3 kids. I was starting to experience some joint pain that was just a little frustrating at the time. And over the course of learning a lot about inflammation, I discovered how great diet changes made me feel. And so over the course of making changes, it really took some time to figure out what was going on and what would work best for me. I decided to go back and study nutrition, and that just led me into a career helping people. And I wasn't really sure at the time where it was going to lead, but I've found great pleasure in helping others to achieve the same kind of improvement in quality of life that I have experienced.
So when you were feeling the joint pain and kind of realizing something needs to happen, once you kind of decided, well, let's try nutrition, did you have somebody that you were working with, or was it your own personal research, or what was going on there?
Mostly it was my own personal research. I did consult with a naturopath at one point. But I really did a lot of research on my own. And because it was just me and the internet at that point, I wanted to understand more about what was the correct information because I just wasn't sure what I was reading, whether it was accurate or not. So that was what led me to go back to school myself.
Yeah. So how do you sort through all that? Like, I still run into that today, and maybe it's even worse today than it was back then with everybody, all the chaos out there. Like, I'd love to talk. I have joint pain and I'm trying to figure out some things. So maybe we can actually talk there as well. Yeah. But like, whenever I look anything up, whether it's a medical condition or something else, it's just like, there's so much data and there's so much conflicting information. Like, how did you, as an accountant, how did you sort of sort through all that and say, okay, I'm going to trust this, I'm not going to trust this? Like, how did you discern what to rely on?
That's a great question. I really just started with things that made sense to me, things that were easy to change, and things that I knew were safe to do. I mean, obviously, I didn't try anything crazy or experimental. And I was also working with my medical doctor as well. But they didn't really have any answers on the nutrition piece. So as I said, I really just did things that made sense to me. But it was because I wasn't sure that I wanted to go back to school and really study it. And what I found is now that I have a lot more knowledge, I can discern all the stuff on the internet, and I'm much better able to say that's accurate or that's not something that I think is worthwhile to consider because I have a lot more background knowledge now.
Well, that's what I think is super attractive as somebody who's thinking, boy, it'd be nice to work with somebody on this stuff, is that you've kind of walked through it all personally and trial and error, which I think gives you a whole new set of skills versus somebody who learns it in a book. Now, that's obviously education is phenomenal and you can learn all those things, but if you haven't actually experienced it, or if you haven't actually gone through the struggle of saying, oh, that works, that doesn't work, that kind of worked, maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I think you're going to learn a lot more about what does and doesn't just from that firsthand experience.
Absolutely. And what I always do when I'm working with clients is, of course, recall how I was feeling, and how hard the changes were, how resistant to change I was, actually. Even if I decided, okay, I'm going to try giving up gluten or dairy or whatever I was doing at the time, I remember how it was actually a suggestion of my naturopath at the time about giving up dairy. And I just said, what? Are you crazy?
What's wrong with you?
So I remember that, and I keep that feeling with me so that when I am working with others, I'm really understanding any of their resistance to change of any kind, and just understanding how it kind of it messes with your routines. I mean, you have habits and routines that involve certain foods, certain choices. And now when you have to change one of those up, you have to stop and think, well, what am I going to eat now? So it's really important in my communications that it's not all about, you need to stop eating this thing. It's really more about, let's swap this with some of these other choices. So it's not really about the giving up, but it's more about, let's try these other options as being more beneficial and helpful for you.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point to say that you can connect with the emotional side of it. We always hear about people emotionally attached for food to food, and I get that on one degree, but I think what I'm hearing from you is that plus this idea of our routines, even our identity in some ways is tied to food for a lot of things. I think about my daughter became vegan a while ago. My wife tried to cut out gluten, and like for my wife, she loves bread, and for me, I'm not a bread guy. You look at me, you think he's probably a bread guy, but I'm not a bread guy. And so I think, well, how hard is it to give up bread? And it was an emotionally difficult thing because there's so many wrapped up memories and that sort of thing in it. And so what I'm hearing you say is, but I can now empathize with people that are going through it. I understand what it means to give up something. I understand what it means to change your routine. And how critical is that to have that as part of your support system when you're working with somebody on nutrition?
I think it's very critical. And then the mindset piece is really big. Health to me isn't one thing. It's not in a silo. It's not, well, if you change these 3 things about your diet, you're going to feel amazing. It's not about that. It really is about all the pillars of health. And mindset is so big and important in any kind of, not just making the change, but also creating a positive mindset around your life and around stresses. And these things can help you sleep better and encourage you to move more. And it's all these pieces that go together into helping you to feel better and overcoming whatever challenges is that you are trying to overcome.
It's amazing how all the people I talk to and how often mindset comes up. And, it's within different worlds and within different applications. So I want to explore that a little bit. Like when you say mindset, when it comes to nutrition and trying to be in the right mindset, I immediately, out of my ignorance, think, okay, I just got to really want it. I got to want it for myself. I mean, is that what we're talking about? Are we talking about something bigger than that when you say you need to be in the right mindset to be able to tackle your nutrition?
I think it's not about willpower. What I was hearing from you when you say I have to want it bad enough, that's we often think of it as being willpower, and I don't think it's so much willpower as really you want to really dig deep into what you want in life, what your values are. One of the exercises that I will often use is what I call the why exercise. And when you state your goal, it's really important to stop and think, well, why is that important? Because often the answer to that initial why question isn't really deep enough to motivate us to make the change, to really help us understand why we want to change. So we need to keep digging. And when we get that answer, we say, okay, well, why is that important?
Mm-hmm.
And then that answer, why is that important? And you've hit the nail on the head when you get goosebumps, or perhaps some deep emotion comes up when you respond, and then this is my real why. And when you can hold on to that, then it really helps. It helps direct your actions and your choices, and working towards lifestyle habit changes potentially.
Yeah, I love that. I do that exercise with my clients as well, kind of the 7 whys and the different ways that you can kind of package that. And I love that because it's so, if you've never done that, if you're listening to this, you've never done it, just do it yourself, start there or get help. But it's so enlightening. People are like, oh my God, I never thought about that. But so I've done that myself, of course, and I've had others do that. And when I do it, when then I say, okay, now I've got my why, now I want to live, my most fulfilling life. And it includes being healthy and those sort of things. But yet there's still a disjoint. Like I'm almost 50 and I want to be healthier. I know I want to be healthier. I've mentally said I can see myself being healthier. I've tried all the tricks, but I'm not. So, what do you talk to people about, or maybe in my situation where they're like, okay, I logically understand all the arguments. I get it. But I've never had a medical diagnosis that says you have to or you're going to die, which is what I think it'll probably take for me to actually become healthier. How do I actually move from really wanting to be healthier and understanding that my best future involves health, but I still haven't done it? And I can give you a million reasons why I haven't, right? I mean, everybody can. But how do you help people, whether it's a mindset thing or otherwise, kind of get over that hurdle of, I know I should, I get it, I've heard all the arguments, I know I should, yet I'm not?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I do think for probably most people, it takes something, like you were saying, I haven't been diagnosed with anything. It actually takes something like that to spur us into action, something we don't like. Now, for everyone, there'll be a different threshold of that. So for me, experiencing some joint pain, I would be in yoga class and I couldn't do everything exactly the way I wanted to be able to, and feeling all sorry for myself. And to me, that was enough, where I really wanted to move toward change. Someone else might need something significant from their family doctor in terms of a test result, where they've been told they need to make a change because of a certain result. Others, may need to be on, say, a couple medications and then have their practitioner say, okay, you're going to need this third one. And they finally say enough.
Right.
So everyone's got a different threshold of where our motivations really are moving away from pain or moving toward pleasure. Those are the two things that motivate us, the push and the pull. Exactly. So it really, everyone's individual on what is strongest for them and where they finally hit what they might call their rock bottom, or certainly a point where they're really motivated for change.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that get in the way is our desire to want things instantaneously, right? Especially here in the West, a lot of times, we want something, we get it. And so this idea of you saying, well, we're all individual. Well, I know, but just tell me the magic thing. Like, just tell me what it is. Like, say those 6 magic words so that I start being healthy. Like, this isn't so hard. Come on, Bonnie. I mean, there's that sort of mentality sometimes that we have. And same thing with once we start making those changes, like we expect to see overnight like changes. Like, okay, well, today I'm going to start getting healthy. So, I ran a half a mile and I lifted a little bit of weights and I didn't eat a bowl of ice cream. And tomorrow I still weigh the same. Like, come on, what's going on? I think we have this idea that we think we need to change overnight. And what I'm hearing you say is we're all unique. We're all individual. It's results are going to take different time, but also the solutions, both mentally and physically, are going to take time.
Absolutely. Some of the things that come to mind as I think about this is everyone acts differently. So some come to me and they're ready to make lots of change and they want drastic change. And others come and say, I can only do one thing at a time. What's the most important? And so we start there. I actually encourage that one thing at a time. and pick something not only that you think is going to be effective and make a difference for you, but also that's going to be fairly easy. It's so motivating to have an early win.
Yeah.
So there's that, and then awareness. I love talking about awareness, because if you're aware of how you're feeling, how your body's feeling, you're going to notice those small wins as well. So as you were saying, I didn't eat a bowl of ice cream and I went for a run. I mean, no, you're probably not going to notice anything the very next day, but it doesn't take too long. It can take a few days or a week, really, where you actually do start to notice some change. And if you can slow down and really think about how you're feeling, you're going to notice those small wins that will keep you going, because now you're going to want another win. And make it you can gamify it if you want. Everyone's got different strategies, but start with awareness, so that you can really become aware of these wins when you're having them.
So how do you help people get over the idea of maybe you're working with clients, and I'm sure you've seen this, where they get involved, they're kind of all in, they're fully motivated, they're at a season of life where it makes sense to be doing those things, and then a major stressor comes on, whether it's coronavirus or a job loss or added stress at home, whatever it might be. And I know, at least for me, and I think for a lot of people that I know, there's an immediate reaction of I just screw it, like whatever, like I can't think about being healthy right now, because we haven't internalized it as a priority. We still see it as an add-on sort of thing rather than actually part of our lifestyle. We just say, well, screw it. I don't have time for that. I don't have time to go to the gym. I don't have time to eat right. I'm just in stress. And so I'm going to go revert back to my old habits. I mean, is that something you see? And then how do you help people navigate through that and maybe even overcome that so that they continue to be healthy?
Yeah, that's actually a really great point. And it's something that I start with right at the beginning. We do talk about this. I talk about it with my clients, where you're really motivated right now. It's often part of the why exercise conversation too. And the reason that we do that is because I give them the heads up that there's going to be a time when this is going to become boring.
Yeah,
They're going to have made some changes. They'll have had a few wins, and then maybe the wins are going to plateau for a bit, or 3 or 4 weeks or a month or two, it will have gone by, and they're not going to be as motivated. So I warn them right at the beginning in advance to prepare for that, so that it doesn't take them by surprise, or it doesn't impact them in quite the same way, because they're ready. And so that's why I say that'll be the time when we're really going to want to go back to your deeper why. We'll want to investigate, what are the roadblocks standing in your way? And again, one of the reasons why you want to potentially make one change at a time until that's a really ingrained new habit, and then move on to the next one. So it all feels very natural. There was one client that said to me, wow, this is just how I eat now. And that was music to my ears. That's really what I want to hear from people, because I don't want them to feel like they're on a plan, because then they're going to feel like at some point they're going to go off of it. And so what we really want is to make the changes natural, slowly integrate them into the routines and the habits, so that it just becomes how you live and eat and work. And it's natural, so that you don't revert back, because it's just become part of your life.
I love that. That's the ultimate goal, right? It's not an add-on. It's actually who we are. And what I hear in what you said there is this idea of expectation management, saying there are going to be things that come up that are going to make you want to quit this. And let's prepare for that in advance. And I think that's where, if we talk a little bit about the role of a coach in all of this. So, I mean, I can only base it on my experience. That's all I have. But, okay, here's a plan. Here's something I'm going to try. That seems really good. It's gamified. So for me as an analytic, you said you're an accountant. I'm an actuary by trade. So, I'm an accountant, but without the personality, that kind of thing. So I understand the analytic side of it. Like for me, I can graph it. I can track it. This will be great, and then we get to the point where whatever comes up, stress at work, whatever comes up, and we scrap it. And I think to myself at the time, boy, it would be good to have accountability on this. But I'm wondering, not if it's accountability, or I think more so like I really need somebody to like come alongside of me and say, okay, you're going to get over this. Here's how you get through this. It is a coach. It's, some people maybe need the firm hand of accountability. I feel like that really didn't do it for me. Like I could tell my wife or my kids and say, hey, hold me accountable. They're not really going to hold me accountable. And I can just not be mean, but I can brush them off a little bit. I can say, whatever, I'm going to do my own thing, versus having a coach that I've maybe paid for where there's some invested interest. So talk a little bit about, that, because I think the best laid plans, I can say, I'm going to stick with this. Come hell or high water, I'm going to, I'm going to do this no matter what. And then time comes and I fade away. But how does a coach help there? And maybe where do you come into helping people in their lives with that?
Yeah, I think as we've talked about how everyone's unique, everyone needs a different level of support. And some people really can take a plan and perhaps I've worked with them more intensely for a period of time, and then they can take it and run with it on their own. There's different personality types, so that works for some people. For others, they say, I just really need that monthly call with you so that I know on the horizon, I have another check-in and I have that support so that I can keep going. So everyone needs a different level of support, so that can work in slightly different ways for different people. But I mean, the accountability it's really to yourself, of course, at the end of the day. But it's human nature. We will all do a little bit more when we have someone else to be accountable for. So it's up to us, though, really to decide who is that, how frequently do I need it, and so there isn't one plan that works precisely for everyone in the same way. But I do think that having someone to support you, whether it's a spouse, if you can do that, that's hard for many people to use their spouse in that way. So oftentimes it's really nice to have a more objective person that's not in your day-to-day routine with you, who can look sort of at the forest from a bird's eye view for you, and do the periodic check-ins as you need it, whether it's monthly or bi-month, every other month or every 6 months or whatever it is for you at that stage of your journey. Then I think that's where I can come in and help.
Okay, yeah, because sometimes I think it feels unfair to put a close relative or a close friend in that spot of holding you accountable. It's you want that, but it's almost unfair to them to ask them to kind of get in your face if you're not doing it the right way.
That's right. I mean, there's the closeness of those relationships. Yeah. There's so much going on there that can be really challenging.
I had one question I was thinking of, sort of unrelated to what we're talking about now, but it came up before when I was thinking about, you said, I kind of tried new things. So maybe I went off dairy, which was painful. Or another time I went off gluten or whatever it is, those things that you were trying. How did you know, like at the time when you were just learning, like how did you know how long to give that? Like say, okay, I'm going to go off dairy and see if that quote unquote works.
That's
like
a great question.
How do you know? Like, okay, let's say dairy was one of those things that never worked, but how would you know? Like, if you didn't give it, do you give it 3 years? Do you give it 2 weeks? Like, how did you sort of wrap your mind around how long I'm going to give this to know if it's going to work or not before I went on to try the next thing?
Yeah, it's such a great question because these are the sorts of things I was doing right at the beginning.
Yeah.
I did start with gluten, and I'll be honest, I gave it about 4 months. Just to be partly because I didn't really know what else to do.
Yeah.
And also, I didn't know what I was looking for, but I really was just looking for less joint pain, more ability to do the kind of activities that I had been doing without noticing any kind of aches or pains. And I did notice a difference, but I kept feeling like, I think there's more. I think I can do more. And that was when I ended up working with a naturopath who suggested the dairy, and I was so resistant, but I decided, you know what, it doesn't have to be forever, and maybe it will work or maybe it won't, but it's worth a try. Again, I did that for a few months. So here I am, like now I'm about 8 months into the process, sort of 4 months off gluten, and then I tried dairy. And then what I really realized, and this was sort of a funny way I kind of identified the next change I made was I was tracking the foods that I was eating and looking for whether or not I was getting enough nutrients. And I was using an app, and the sugar was like off the charts every day. And I thought, gosh, this app doesn't even work. And I even said that to a friend, and she kind of laughed at me. But it really made me stop and think, well, where's the sugar coming from in my diet? Like, I've given up gluten and dairy. How can I possibly have anything left that's terrible in my diet? And where it was really sneaking in, I discovered was in dried fruit. To me, of course, fruit is healthy.
Great.
But I was really pounding it in there. I was using way more than I should have, and I was really eating too much sugar. It wasn't necessarily refined sugar and cookies and ice cream, because I'd given those things up. But even the dried fruit gave me too much sugar when you overdo it. So I realized you can even overdo healthy foods. So that also made a big change for me. So I would say those were my three big changes where I realized kind of at the end of, now at this point, probably about a year, I was feeling a ton better. But I really wanted to understand more, and that's where I went back to school.
And your focus was really on the joint pain. I mean, I'm sure there's pieces of, we always want to lose weight, we always want to build mass, whatever those other goals are. But ultimately, what you were doing when you say I was feeling better was you were really focused on how can I alleviate joint pain. So you really kind of knew what your ultimate objective was in this exploration process.
I did. So that was really where I was comparing things to when I was asking myself, is this working? It was how my joints were feeling. But at the same time, I was lucky enough that I was aware enough that I noticed other positive effects. That I was sleeping a bit better, even though I hadn't really thought of sleep as being an issue for me. It was better. My moods were better. So my mental health was better. And even though these were things that I wasn't really focused on changing at the time, I realized this is helping my whole body. This isn't just improving one area. There's a lot of other areas. And this is also when I'm working with clients, for instance, and we do a full intake, there's a lot of different symptoms there, but there's usually their 1-2 goals, the top goals that we're really focused on. But a lot of times those other little symptoms that they've identified, but that aren't really a huge issue, those things are also going to improve when you're working on your big goal. But
isn't that so true? Like,
I just love the way. Yeah.
It's so true of so much of life, right? Like you could say, okay, I want to improve my financials. And so you do something, whatever, and also your financials are better, but you find out here's all these other benefits too. Like I'm actually, I'm less stressed. All of these other things that sort of come out from that, or I want to remove anger. And all of a sudden there's all these other residual benefits beyond just not getting angry. And what I'm hearing from you is improving your health. Yeah, you're going to get the health benefits, but there's other things that kind of come with that. When your sleep is better, how much better is your life in total? When your moods are better, how much better are your relationships in total and your own self-confidence? And so that's an interesting thing, because you hear people talk about nutrition and they talk about the holistic approach. And, I think for some of us that aren't close to it, we hear, okay, you're going to change my entire world by cutting out sugar. Okay. Well, when you actually, when you bring it down to this and you say, okay, in my specific case, I cut out sugar and it reduce the joint pain and all these other things started flourishing. That makes sense to me, because there's natural ramifications of improving your life in one area.
Absolutely. I mean, they talk about the gut-brain connection as an example of, when you improve the microbiome in your gut, your mental health also improves. So, I mean, the body isn't in silos; it's all connected. So. When you improve one area, you're likely to see improvements in another area as well. And I just love that, because we're only here for one trip, and might as well feel great all around.
I love that. So, okay, so you're an accountant and you're struggling with your joint pain. You're a mother, young mother of three. You're figuring out a solution. You get a solution eventually after a year of trying. And now, whatever, I don't know, however long it was later, all of a sudden you are a nutrition coach. You went back to school or, you got educated on those things. So I'm curious this journey because it's a journey not unlike mine in terms of going from I assume either corporate or an analytical role as an accountant to now you're like a personal coach, and those seem very different. Like, okay, I'm an accountant and now I'm coaching people on nutrition, and I know it was maybe a gradual thing, but talk a bit about that. Like, do you feel like that was just you were an accountant at one phase and then your natural progression moved to this, or do you feel like you were always like a coach helping others trapped in an accountant's body kind of thing?
I don't know. I don't think at the time, for sure, I did not think I was a coach when
Right.
I was working as an accountant. That's for sure. And it may be that the progression to being a parent, because then I really did feel like I was a coach as a parent. So that was, I think, maybe perhaps my transition, and in certainly in a skill set, because you're as a parent. Kind of that's part of the job, really, is
Yeah.
coaching. So moving into the nutrition front, and then as a nutrition coach, I really think that was kind of the progression, and just my own personal experience was so positive, created such a dramatic change in my quality of life, and I did want to be able to share that with others. So I had some motivation there as well, that I wanted to share this experience so that others could improve certain areas, and hopefully many areas of their life as well, with my help.
So did you start working with other people, coming alongside people, coaching people while you were still an accountant? Did you kind of do both for a while, or was there a more of a clean split in that?
No, there was really a clean split. So when I went back to school, that was when I left the accounting work. So in school, I was no longer working. And it was right coming out of school that I started right away. I did have someone that I knew call me up and say, "Hey, I wonder if you can help me." and that started the whole thing. And so it
And
started right out of finishing nutrition school.
so when you went back to school, was the idea to finish nutrition school and then start coaching, or were you just open to whatever and just wanted to get educated?
Really, at the time of going back, I was not sure. I was open, as you say, to I was wanting the knowledge, and I was open to, to see what was going to happen out of there. I didn't actually have that plan, but it came together really quickly when I graduated that it was what I wanted to do.
So was there, I mean, clearly, it sounds like I'm going through puberty, my voice cracked. Was there, there's obviously this pull side of things where you went through this, you thought, oh man, I just love this. I'm going to get educated. I'm going to help other people, that sort of piece. Was there any kind of a push piece out of the accountancy thing? Like, I don't want to put you on make you in an awkward situation, but were you starting to also feel like this just isn't me anymore? Or was it really, oh, I love being an accountant. It's just, this is so motivating that I just need to chase this.
Yeah, absolutely. There was some push as well. So there was the pull of the motivation, but there was kind of the lack of there's something lacking in the career that I was in that wasn't fulfilling me. That again, it's your happiness and in life is about everything, and being fulfilled in your career is really important. So there was a bit of lack there, and so there was that little bit of push out of that, and then uh, the great interest in health and improving your health naturally. That was pulling me in at the same time, for sure. Yes.
And I think that's a hard thing for people to understand. I've tried to explain this to people, and some people get it, some people don't. This idea of having a really good job, and I assume it was a good job being an accountant, yet not being satisfied, not being completely fulfilled and wanting something more. Because I think, that type of a job, I think a lot of people would say, oh my gosh, that'd be amazing if I could be an accountant, and either make the money or just have the stability or whatever it is to be smart enough to be an accountant. People would say, "Oh my God, that's so good. How can you leave that and go do something else?" And I think some people just don't understand that mindset of saying, "I know on paper it's a good job, but it's just not giving me life." And that doesn't mean accounting is bad. That doesn't mean your firm was bad, or if you're doing it independently, it doesn't mean it's bad. It's just not fulfilling your life. And I think that's a hard thing for people to reconcile. So maybe, as we're starting to get close to the end of time, maybe how do you explain that? Because I'm still looking for words to help explain that idea of, I have a really good life on paper, but I'm not satisfied.
Yeah, that's a tough one, because I actually was at a firm that it was a great firm.
Yeah.
I loved the people I worked with. And perhaps it was a couple of things. Perhaps the work wasn't fulfilling me, but it may have also been that I wasn't in the mindset of having it fulfill me. I think there's a bit of both. And perhaps I needed to go through a shift in my mindset. When I look back, I even think, there were things I could have asked for at the firm that probably would have made me happier and fulfilled me more. But I didn't either know to ask for them, or it just didn't even occur to me. So I think there's a bit of both. That it wasn't automatically fulfilling me, but I also wasn't putting something in. And it wasn't something that I even really discovered until later, when I was going through the rest of my journey. And then I can look back on it, and perhaps with a more objective view of it, and say, hey, I could have done more too. So I think there's a bit of both, but I'm very happy where I am at now. And so no regrets. And I also don't believe in general about regrets. I think things happen for a reason, and your journey is what it is for a reason. And so I have absolutely no regrets. I think it was the experience I needed at the time, and now this is the experience I'm needing right now. That's
Love
what's
it.
in that.
I love it. Well, we'll talk a little bit about how people can plug in with you. So people are listening to this going, "Ooh, I like how Bonnie thinks about this. This might be the breakthrough I need. I need somebody to talk with, either about my why goals, what my ultimate driving force is, or whether it's accountability, or whether it's just encouragement or ideas, or they're saying, okay, now's the time. I need to connect with somebody. Bonnie seems legit." How do they connect with you on that deal?
Well, fantastic. I have a website. It's just my name. It's bonnieflemington.com. I am also on Facebook and Instagram, but there's definitely a way you can contact me through my website. And some of the things that I think to start with really are awareness. I love that. And making one change at a time. Those are some of my recommendations for how to get started. So anything that we've talked about today, I've mentioned a few things I did personally. Get started on one thing, and just know that it doesn't need to be forever. It's just something you're trying. Experiment with it. Play with it a little. Make it fun.
Love it. And I'll put all of Bonnie's contact information in the show notes as well. Or if you have any problem getting in touch with her, just get in touch with me, and I can connect you with Bonnie as well. But I'm gonna do a quick wrap up, Bonnie. Then we're gonna come back to you, and you can close us off if you have a quote or final thoughts that you want to leave with the audience. But you guys that are listening out there, thanks for all the support. I get a lot of emails. I get a lot of notes from people saying, "Man, good job. I like this guest." That's super fun. So I appreciate the encouragement. I'm not too proud to say it actually means a lot to me. So thank you for that. If you want to encourage what we're doing here, if you want to support what we're doing with Just Steve, man, the best thing you can do is just go like, rate, and review the podcast, subscribe. Those things help a ton, help get the word out about what we're doing, help us continue to get great guests. You can go to stevefredlund.com. You can sign up for the email newsletter out there. And if you want to financially support all these creative things that we're doing with this, the Rwanda videos, all of the other stuff, you can go to patreon.com/stevefredlund. Support for as little as $1 a month. And that would mean the world to me as well. So a lot of ways you can connect. But most of all, thanks for just the encouragement, the support, for letting me do what I love to do, which is just talk to interesting people, which is Bonnie Flemington is one of those people. And so, Bonnie, thank you for your time, but I'll come back to you, and now you can give us parting words.
All right, great. Well, first, I'd love to thank you, Steve. You are a great interviewer. This has been a fabulous conversation.
Super fun.
Yeah. So the quote that I have picked for today is awareness is the greatest agent for change. Just love that one. And so start with awareness.
Is that a Bonnie Flemington quote? Is that your own?
No, it's something that I'm working with another practitioner. She is a yoga meditation and she talks a lot about awareness. So I've got that from her.
I love it. Say it one more time.
Awareness is the greatest agent for change.
Love it. Totally agree. All right, Bonnie, thank you so much for jumping on here all the way from Toronto, Canada, And I didn't hear process. I didn't hear any of those fun words, but we'll let it go. I'll still believe you that you're from Canada.
All right. That's great. Thanks.
All right. Take care, everybody.